Hi everyone, thank you for joining me. Now we are almost halfway through the year and I've been reading quite a lot. I've currently read 61 books this year and I think it's time I did a bit of a wrap up. What are the 10 best books that I've read so far this year? Now I promise you there will be something awesome in there for you to take away and read yourself. It's been genuinely challenging to nail that down to just 10 books and I haven't put them in any particular order. Maybe I'll do that at the end of the year, but for now we've just got 10 really good books for you to get stuck into. First up we've got Ghost Music by Anne Yu. Now I knew absolutely nothing about this book when I picked it up. I went to a nice bookshop, I looked at what was in their charts and this instantly jumped out at me. Genuinely, I purchased it within seconds of picking it up because I really liked the cover art. In fact, let me grab it so I can show you what it looks like. Look at that, isn't that a cool book? Look, you've got these cool looking weird mushrooms on the front. I really like the colour choices, this kind of dark background, these vibrant mushrooms on the front. I love this kind of minimalist text that's on the front of it. It just looks so interesting and different. I had to buy it. And you know what, I'm so glad I did. Really enjoyed this book. It is an odd one, it's kind of surreal. It tells the story of a woman called Song Yan who lives in Beijing. She's a former concert pianist who gave up her career when she married an executive car salesman and now she just teaches piano while her husband brings in the majority of the money. You quickly get the idea that maybe she isn't fulfilled in her life and she needs something else. Maybe she should build a family. Maybe she needs some kind of deeper meaning or to explore the other sides of her personality. But her whole life gets thrown into turmoil when some things about her husband's past come forwards. At the same time, she starts receiving these weird packages of mushrooms delivered to her door. Eventually, she receives a letter from a man called Bai Yu. Now, he's a famous concert pianist who disappeared many years ago and no one knows what happened to him. It's odd that all of a sudden he pops up into her life. This takes her on a really surreal journey of self-discovery and reflection on her past choices. The novel really skillfully explores themes of grief, the collapse of marriage and traditional gender roles in Chinese society. The story is told in an awesome way that has a really good sense of atmosphere. It feels really haunting and stylish. It's only a short book, not much more than 200 pages, and I got through it in no time at all. If you can manage a bit of the surreal and you like something unusual in your books, then I think you will absolutely love Ghost Music by Anne Yu. Next up, we've got The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. Now I absolutely love Neil Gaiman. I've mentioned him loads of times on this channel and I'm running out of things to read. I've been really trying to spread out his books because I discovered him not too long ago and I've just been absolutely loving everything I've read. The Ocean at the End of the Lane holds up so well, just as every other book I've read by him does. This is a fantastical and somewhat dark story of a man who is pulled back to his childhood home for a funeral. While he's there, he takes a little wander down the lane and he encounters the neighbouring farm. He instantly has a flashback of some events that happened in his childhood, events that up until then he hadn't quite remembered. He talks of a girl called Lottie Hempstock and the strange and dangerous events that took place surrounding her and her family in his childhood. I won't say too much more than that because it's a good story and I'd like you to discover it yourself, but you do have to be open to a bit of fantasy. This novel explores themes of memory and the innocence of childhood contrasted against the harsh reality of adulthood. There's a constant blurring of the lines between reality and fiction, and I think Neil Gaiman does really well whenever he touches on subjects of childhood. That's something he really knows how to handle. The novel is just as complex, imaginative and poetic as Neil Gaiman tends to be. I think this is one of his best works. If you haven't checked it out yet, then please do. I just find his style of writing effortlessly engaging and I could genuinely read these books non-stop. Our third book is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I'd heard this book recommended so many times before I eventually got round to reading it, and I shouldn't have put it off because this book was so good. It tells the story of a man named Ryland Grace. He's a high school science teacher who wakes up aboard a spaceship with no memory of why he got there or what he's there to do. There is no one else around him, he's on his own out in the middle of space. Eventually, through a series of flashbacks, he's able to piece together what's going on. It turns out he's on a one-way mission to save the Earth from an energy-eating microorganism called the astrophage. It is not a smooth journey for Ryland Grace. This book is filled with ups and downs. It is a genuine page-turner, and it will keep you reading non-stop. Andy Weir has an amazing way of writing science fiction. It all feels genuinely backed up in science. I don't know how much of it is actually reliable science, but it really comes across that that is the case. There's some really deep themes of survival and friendship, but it's all held together with a nice sense of humour. The book doesn't take itself too seriously. and I really like that. I would say don't be put off if you don't usually read books about space or fantasy. This is a book that I think all readers will enjoy. Our next book is by an author called Max Porter. It's called Grief is the Thing with Feathers. Now this is another book that I knew absolutely nothing about when I stepped into it. I remember starting to read it. I'd actually booked my car to have its tyres changed. I thought it'd be a really quick appointment and I could get home again. But once they got the wheels off, they realised they didn't have the new ones in stock and I was kind of stranded for a few hours. Luckily there was a Waterstones nearby, so I wandered in and picked up a book. I then went back to the tyre shop with my book in hand and sat there till they were finished, which meant I actually read the entire book in their forecourt. Now I'll be honest, when I read this book I was very tired and I was very hungover, so I wasn't necessarily working at my optimum. And this book genuinely had me on the verge of tears sat in this business. It was much deeper than I expected and I really do recommend you check it out. Grief is the Thing with Feathers is a poetic and poignant look at the impact of grief on a family. It tells the story of a father of two young boys. He's recently lost his wife and has to adjust to raising these young boys on his own. His grief is manifested in the vision of a crow that follows him around and kind of navigates his life. You really can't know what to expect from this book. It doesn't follow any structure whatsoever. One section can be a traditional novel, the next it can be a poem, it could then be a diary. You really don't know what to expect as you turn the page. But whichever form he's using at the time, his lyrical prose do a fantastic job of capturing those raw emotions of loss. It delves into themes of healing, resilience, and the power of love in the face of profound grief. I've actually since went on to read another book by him which is entitled Shy, and it was also really good. I did wonder how he could follow up something so unusual and so interesting, and he did a really good job. He did stick with that unusual style of not working with just one form of writing, and it really works for him. I'm interested to see where he goes next. My next book is a title that kind of exploded towards the end of last year and early this year. If you read quite a bit, you've probably heard of it. It's The Seven Husbands of Evangeline Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is a captivating tale following the eventful love life of Evangeline Hugo. From her humble beginnings as a young actress, we follow her journey of passion and heartbreak as she climbs the Hollywood ladder. Throughout her journey, she finds herself entangled with 7 husbands, each of them representing a distinct era of her life. Here we see how these events shape her into the powerful, resilient woman she becomes. It's a genuinely fantastic book that does a great job of balancing a really engaging love story with all the glitz and glamour of a Hollywood lifestyle. I've gone on to recommend this book to quite a few people since reading it and they've all absolutely loved it. Genuinely, this one is not to be missed. My 6th book is called This Could Be Us by Claire McGowan. Now this was a really interesting novel. This tells the story of a woman called Kate. She is the mother of a family including a young son and a profoundly disabled daughter. Kate finds herself feeling that this was all a bit much for her and not really the life she'd chosen. When she gets the opportunity to run away to LA and start a new life, she takes that opportunity. She goes without leaving a trace, saying not a word to anyone. That leaves her husband Andrew and her old best friend Olivia to try and raise her children in really difficult circumstances. The guilt for Kate is unbearable and she struggles with that for many years, but she doesn't return. During that time, her husband Andrew writes a memoir talking about the struggles, challenges and successes that he's had raising their heavily disabled daughter. Eventually, Kate's second husband, a successful LA film producer, actually picks up that book and decides to turn it into a film, putting Kate in a very unusual situation. I thought this book was absolutely fantastic. You've heard the story loads of times about the man in the relationship running away, going out for a pint of milk and never coming back again. You don't often hear about it being the woman. And I thought it was really interesting to put that spin on it and how would a male react in that circumstance. I mean, I'm sure it's happened many times, but it's just not something you hear about very often. I found this really engaging. I think I've been on a bit of a parenting kick with some of the books I've read lately. I've got a young daughter and it's always good if you can relate to the people in your book. I'm not sure I could quite relate to Kate in this book, but you can understand some of the challenges that go through people's heads and I'm sure it would be really difficult raising a family in those circumstances. Anyway, I really did enjoy this book, but it can be a challenging read. There's some really rough themes that they're looking at there, so you have to go into that ready for what could be coming. My 7th book is Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. Now this is a book I really didn't think I would like. I'd seen it in the charts for ages, and it just didn't look like the kind of book that would engage me. I was completely wrong and I've since gone on to recommend this to absolutely loads of people. It's a really uplifting, heartfelt novel. It tells the story of a young female scientist called Dr. Alice Levine. It's set in the 1950s against the backdrop of a very male-dominated scientific world. We see Alice navigate numerous obstacles, professional setbacks, and a really complicated love life. And it's all done with a real charm, wit. It's really engaging, and I think you'll absolutely love this book. It's got themes of ambition, resilience, the pursuit of fulfillment against the backdrop of a changing era. It's really well written, it's engaging, it's got twists, and it leaves you feeling uplifted. My 8th book is Down and Out in Paris and London by George Orwell. Now, I've had this book on my shelf for absolutely ages and I haven't touched it. I absolutely love George Orwell. I think 1984 is a perfect book. But I never got round to reading this because I'd read that it was an autobiographical book. I thought, without it being a novel, it might not be anywhere near as interesting and exciting as his other works. Well, I was wrong. Completely wrong. This is an amazing book. Down and Out in Paris and London is a semi-autobiographical book that charts the harsh realities of poverty across 2 different cities. Through Orwell's first-hand experiences, the reader is immersed in the squalor and desperation of the working class people at the time of writing. Here we see a struggle to survive while searching for dignity amidst the grind. From menial jobs to the depths of homelessness, Orwell's narrative exposes the dehumanising effects of societal inequality. This is a really powerful book. I burned through it in just one day, but it was so rough. I just can't believe one man could go through so much and then go on to write some of the greatest fiction mankind has ever seen. At number 9, we've got another classic novel, Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Now, what to say here? I've already covered this on the channel, but what an incredible book. Now, I wanted to read this for so long, but I thought it would be much too challenging of a read. It was written in Russia in the 1800s. How could it hold up today? Well, it absolutely does. Crime and Punishment delves into the psychological turmoil of Rodion Raskolnikov, a poverty-stricken ex-student. Driven by his theory that extraordinary men can be above the law, he goes on to commit a heinous murder for his own profit, with the hopes that he can use his newfound wealth to bounce on and find greatness. What actually happens is guilt gnaws at his conscience and his entire world begins to crumble. We see a really interesting character arc come along as he explores his redemption and his guilt, and he starts to find connection with other people around him. This is an incredible book that holds up so well. It's certainly not an easy read. I did have to constantly check my notes as the Russian names seemed to blend into one. But the writing still felt so fresh. It's amazing that this was written over 150 years ago. My final book, and an absolutely fantastic read, is Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. I discovered him late last year and I've never been let down by him once since. Never Let Me Go is a haunting and thought-provoking story set in a secluded boarding school called Hailsham. The story revolves around 3 friends, Kathy, Ruth and Tommy, as they go through their early life and into adulthood, and they begin to find more and more about the world around them. They soon find out what their true reason for being is. They are clones that were created for the purpose of organ harvesting. They navigate love, friendship, and the inevitability of their predetermined existence. Ishiguro raises profound questions around identity and the ethical implications of scientific advancements. Ishiguro's got a really elegant and poignant style of writing. His writing seems to span across multiple genres and he handles each of them really, really well. This is perfect storytelling, very well written, big topics that can have a massive impact on the reader but are so easy to read. If you haven't checked out anything by Kazuo Ishiguro yet, then this might be his pinnacle. So there you have it, those are the 10 books that I've enjoyed most so far this year, and I'd love to make my second half of the year even better. So if you've got any recommendations that you think I should check out, then please let me know in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this video, then a like would be appreciated and I would love to see you on the next one. Thank you very much. Goodbye.